Okay. Before we start the session, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land Monash University operates, as well as paying our respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everyone. It's great to have you join this session today, part 4 of our 5-part series on employability. Please note we have the recordings from our previous sessions online, the Faculty of IT homepage under events, and you'll need to click the past events filter. We're very excited to have this week's panelists join us. We have Carolyn from Slalom Build, Selena from FDM Group, and Joe, who's a product manager at Car Sales. By way of a brief introduction, Carolyn Taylor from Slalom Build is an experienced senior program management and delivery professional with a demonstrated history of working in technology, engineering, and telecommunications industry, particularly in product and capability development to market. Skilled in agile project management, stakeholder management with extensive digital and cloud background, focusing on customer experience. Selena Gonzalez is an experienced graduate recruiter with a demonstrated history of working in the information technology industry. Skilled in full cycle recruitment, graduate engagement, and workshop delivery. Selena has been with the FDM Group, who are an IT services and consulting group, for the last 2 years, assisting and engaging with students looking to find graduate roles within the field. And finally, we have Joe Hoteling from Car Sales. Joe has had 8 years experience in agile delivery, 5 of which in strategic product management, leading cross-functional lean product teams to deeply understand, validate, and solve customer problems in ways that customers love, yet are viable for the business. Experienced in leading, defining, delivering, and measuring OKRs, collaborating with customers and stakeholders, and validating ideas using qualitative and quantitative data. Thank you for joining us today, guys, and being our panelists. We'll start the Q&A session with Carolyn, if that's okay.
Yes, hello everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Carolyn, would you be able to give us a brief background on your professional career?
Yeah, sure. So I started off as an engineering graduate, majoring in software systems. Started off as a technical business analyst at the airport, and moved into sort of an IT project manager role. But basically, I was part of the IT team that managed the airport IT infrastructure and networks that supported the airport operations. Like your flight displays, your baggage controlling, and things like that. And then I moved, after about 4 or 5 years, I moved into Telstra, which is where I spent most of my career, about a decade. And I went through different parts of the business, from emerging engineering, where we look at new and emerging technology that we can bring to enterprise and government customers as part of Telstra. And then moved into, just before AWS came to Australia, we started the inception of cloud engineering and solutions, again, for our enterprise customers as well. Before, in the last sort of 4 to 5 years, we moved towards digital transformation and shifting Telstra's ways of working into agile at scale. I joined about a year ago. I joined Slalom Build. So Slalom is a consulting company headquartered in Seattle, as a solution owner. So the day-to-day role is really leading delivery with some of our clients, along with a team of engineers at Slalom, to bring value engineering work into their business.
Oh, thank you.
So that's a bit about me.
Yeah, sounds good. So you mentioned tech consultants. What do tech consultants do?
So traditionally, tech consultants are brought into organizations to help to solve a variety of business problems with technology. So typically like security risk, scaling issues and things like that. So regardless the problem, they're typically there to sort of solve and the solution that they're proposing, and we often work with across the business and the model within a business, so across like executives, leaders, senior managers, and the teams within a company. So Slalom is no different to that. Slalom, we're, as I said before, we're a global consulting company. We focus on strategy, technology, and transformation work. The arm of Slalom I'm in is Slalom Build, which is an engineering part of Slalom. So we kind of, meet with our Slalom counterpart to provide end-to-end solutions. So the Slalom part sort of, look at more of a business strategy, how we can transform. And then we, from the build team, look at providing that end-to-end solution and help our customers, basically implement, what we've suggested from a transformation perspective. So it can be from early stage strategy and technology work into digital product creation, modernization. We're a big partner with AWS, so there's a lot of work that we do there to help our customers with their journey onto AWS, how they modernize their product, how do they shift their ways of working to as part of their journey into bringing AWS into their companies as well.
Oh, great. And what trends do you see that have or are disrupting the tech consulting industry currently?
So COVID has impacted, obviously, I think impacted a lot of industries, but to a degree, tech consultants typically, we're on site. We work closely with clients. We kind of, we're liaising and we're listening to, client problems and where we can help them solve issues. And COVID has impacted a huge part of that from a networking perspective. But I think, more and more so, I think there's an increasing need to, for tech consulting to sort of shift towards being more about people, being empathetic, and really tailoring what we bring to our clients' problems, in terms of a solution perspective, and not just look at, cookie cutter solution where like, okay, it works for this bank or this particular company, it's going to work for yours. So, kind of tailoring that. And I think from a technology standpoint, it has also increased the need and urgency, given the last 2 years for, that shift in transformation to how we work in a digital environment, and move to a more cloud native environment. Which are all areas that currently Slalom Build is specializing in as well. So we're seeing massive growth through the pipeline in terms of the work that the value that we bring to our customers.
Yeah, that's great. And what tips do you have that helps you keep up to date with emerging trends? Is there an avenue to assist you in that regard?
Lots of talking to people. I think, apart from that, like reading, paying attention about, what's current in your industry, market, and companies. But yeah, if you're not a reader, definitely, talk to people, networking. You can find like community events in person or online, industry associations. There's plenty of that. And, that gives you opportunities to network. And really just be curious, keep an open mind, and just keep, listening out. I think there's no limits to learning, emerging trends, right? Like across all the different industries, you'll find plenty of, different industries will bring in sort of different sort of trends that you'll find. Absolutely.
So just within Slalom or with you yourself, what programming languages are commonly used? Is it Python?
Yeah, common industry languages, I think across, so we have, certain skill sets in our engineers, but what we see that are common in the clients that we work with are, you typically have like your usual sort of, so when I was in engineering, this was like a while ago, it was like C++, right? But now it's like completely legacy. Nobody wants to deal with C++. So what's kind of like current ones are like, your JavaScript, React, Python. It's currently more prevalent in sort of data engineering solutions, and your traditional Java and C#, they're still pretty prevalent at the moment as well.
And would it be worthwhile for students to, even after they complete their degree, to do kind of further programming training or just reading up on their own, or is that something that you'll pick up on the job?
Pick up on the job, yeah. I think there's nothing. like, practice is always better than sort of, theory. So definitely, there's plenty, like currently now at the moment, I think you can find plenty of online training, like on LinkedIn Learning, or some of them, trying to think, what is it, like Udemy. You get a lot of courses there to, get on top of languages if you want to, like, or like a sneak peek into it. But yeah, like I would definitely encourage, I think, unless you sort of put it to practice, it can be hard, right? In terms of, in terms of like, getting used to like mastering the language itself. So
yeah. Well, know what, like obviously students wouldn't be able to be a master, coming into a grad role. So they shouldn't feel that pressure, I'd assume, but that still doesn't change things. You're still always going to feel like you should.
Yeah.
So that, I
Yeah,
guess,
and I think they be comfortable with the language that you're in as well. So those are the key ones.
yeah. So that's the kind of tech side of things, but on the soft skill kind of side of things, if I want to pursue a career in tech consulting, what kind of soft skills should be learned as a student, or at least attempted to?
I think, yeah, in tech consulting, as I said before, a lot of it is around, sort of, asking the right questions of our clients. So, first and foremost, really communication, which includes, communicating as well as being a good and active listener. I think that's important in really every single job, not just limited to tech consulting. The other soft skill, you've got like critical and creative thinking. So again, what we take in from our clients, listening to that, and then having the ability to sort of transform that to analyze the solution and problem, and be able to come up with how can we solve this, and devising that, right? So, and then the third thing really, I think, being, having to deal with a wide range of people and roles in companies. Really being empathetic to, having that empathy skills, being able to read people in different situations, body language, and really allowing people to be, I think with the whole COVID thing coming in, a lot of our conversations or interactions are online, but really, allowing people to be themselves and being accepting of who they are as well. So yeah, I think, soft skills really, those key things, and then just be yourself, I think, first and foremost.
And what tips do you recommend for students to narrow down their area of interest to choose a career path?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, look at the key areas, sort of the key pillars. So you've got like consultancy, you've got product natured companies, you've got industry as well. It's really, I think it's a personal preference, but really start with, those key pillars, where do you feel you fit in, and where do you feel like, you want to work for, and then really look at the day-to-day, look at roles across it. So internships and graduate programs usually offer great experience and insight to a business, as you get, through that you get a breadth of experience on the ground. And then also, some of the larger corps, they tend to rotate you around their businesses, and from a role perspective as well. So that gives you, different roles of experience. So you might be an experienced designer if you want in one space, and then you feel like that might not be me. I'll go into a business analyst role in the risk team, and then I might go into sort of data analyst team. So have a look around. I definitely recommended that. But I think for me, I find, having worked through a couple of industries, for me, working at the core of the business is where I like, right? Because I think, the core of the business, that's typically where the focus is, where the energy is. And usually, that's where the innovation comes from as well. But yeah, I think be willing to experiment and try a few things out. There's no right or wrong in terms of the roles that you land in.
Can I add something as well for everyone? Just
Yeah.
sorry, Caroline, just thought I'd mention too, like it's worth considering as well, like different company sizes. So there's places that are really just small startups that are at the very beginning of their formation, really, and then you have companies that are at a stage where they've found product market fit, which means that they've actually found a solution that customers want and they can scale off of it. So they're on that journey now towards becoming a very big company. And there's also companies that are well established in the industry, that are software companies that have been around for a while. And then you also have enterprise companies, which are traditionally in the past were more bricks and mortars types of company, like banks and all that, that then had some kind of digital transformation. All of these different types of companies have their pros and cons in terms of pace and innovation. And you'll find that your different type of personality might be better suited to different types of companies. So if you're like someone who's really keen on like hyper experimentation, run where there's probably really long hours, really stressful, but also quite rewarding, like you may find a startup to be quite a rewarding space to be in, because these types of companies essentially are running out of money and they're trying to figure out what's the best product market fit before they run out of money. So the flip side of that is super innovation. Like there's kind of nothing to stop them because there's no like brand baggage or anything, right? But then you also have companies like where I am, where we're kind of like middle-sized and they've been around for a bit longer. Things are a bit harder to get through sometimes, but the plus side of that is there could be a bit more rigor around experimentation and validating of ideas. But then you also have enterprise like banks where I've been before, where in those types of areas, they have like really solid like brand image, which means that there's a lot more risk for them. Things move a bit slower, but at the same time, you get things like really well orientated processes. So consider those things as well. Like when you're looking at where to work, I mean, I'd say try as many different of these places as possible. Like don't think like you have to be somewhere for 5 years. I'd say like even go like 1 or 2 years at this early stage, just to really get a feel of all these different places and see what suits you the best as a person in terms of your personality.
Yeah, no, really good points there, Joe. I think, yeah, so I think when you find like when you're in smaller companies, your role tend to be more like generalist. So like, you get a breadth of responsibilities, whereas larger corps, you tend to kind of, not so much siloed, but you're a specialist in your area. But then in a larger corp as well, you get that opportunity across different business units, different teams, so yeah. There's pros and cons, like Joe said, and it's really, really comes back to, how your personality is and what you enjoy.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, and just finally, Carolyn, looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently in your career?
I've really enjoyed my journey, but I think if I have to look back, I'm a bit risk adverse. So for me, if I can kind of wind time back, like opportunities where I could have traveled to take on jobs at different countries, and I think even within Australia, right? So I think my advice is really, if you get that opportunity, take it when you're young and when you don't have as much commitment that restrict where you are from a location perspective. And really just, take some risk in your career, right? So don't chase a role for the title, the promotion, or the money. I know it's easier said than done, but really at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're in the industry that you're passionate about, and it's a role that you really enjoy. So it is going to be your life. So make sure that it is something, that you'll truly be happy in and enjoy doing. And don't be afraid to take that on.
That's great. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll move on to Selena. Selena, how's it going?
Good.
That's good. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. Can you please give us a brief background on your professional career?
Yeah, for sure. So a little bit about myself. I actually studied a degree in psychology, so it's not quite tech related. However, I knew that I wanted to be a graduate recruiter, and I decided to start this career in sort of the IT sector because it's as I say, it is a future-proof industry and it's just quite exciting. There's lots of emerging technologies. So I knew that I wanted to start a career here. So I was quite fortunate enough to start with FDM as a graduate recruiter after finishing my psychology degree. And then a year later, I got promoted as a senior graduate recruiter and university partnerships consultant, wherein I help sort of increase our employer brand and just really assist in launching graduate careers in the IT space.
Right, lovely. So, what do you look for in a candidate when you're assessing?
Yeah, so I guess specifically with FDM, with our graduate programs, although they are quite business or tech focused, we do recruit from all different backgrounds, all disciplines. So we don't necessarily look for grads who come from a STEM degree. But what I would always say is that we look for graduates with the right attitude and aptitude. So when we say attitude, that's more about, let's say your eagerness to learn, your natural curiosity, you being a resilient achiever. So all these soft skills, which are really, I guess, needed and transferable in the industry as well. But then at the same time, when we say aptitude, that's more about your problem solving, your critical thinking skills, your creativity, to work in the tech space. So it's more about the attitude, which is displayed by sort of your energy, the passion that you bring in your interviews. And then on the other side, the aptitude, we do have different technical assessments, which is not really necessarily to do with coding if you're applying for a software development role, or data visualization tests if you're applying for a business intelligence role. It's more about just general problem solving skills, because we do provide you training on the job to pick up all those, I guess, niche skill sets that you need. Good
to know. And what's your application process like? So if I had sent through my resume and it got accepted, what would the first step be? Would that be like a group type situation?
Yeah, so specifically with FDM, once you submit an application online, your CV gets reviewed by a recruiter. So I know other companies, they do have AI that would assist them with the whole recruitment process. So just a tip on that, if you are sending out your resumes, make sure you've got keywords, those key skills that a lot of recruiters or even AIs, they do have buzzwords that they look for in a CV. So if you've got those technical skills, you will easily get noticed. So that's just sort of a tip. But then once you submit an application, we do have a pre-screening call. So it's more of just a getting to know you. Usually initial calls or initial contacts with a recruiter is just for us to really assess whether you'd be a good fit for the role, not so much in a formal way, but just for us to understand your passions and your interests, and then also to check if you meet some of the basic requirements. And then further to that, we've got a recorded interview and then a technical aptitude test. I guess with the whole pandemic, with the whole COVID, we've moved all our assessments online. So that's something that grads need to be sort of familiar and comfortable with, just the way in which they present themselves online. So the tests that we have, they're psychometric or aptitude assessments, but then the video interviews, they're actually a pre-recorded interview. So I know how quite uncomfortable it is sometimes to speak to a camera, but I guess that's just a way moving forward now with a lot of companies. And then after that as well, we invite our grads for a virtual assessment day, wherein they get to meet different people in the business and they go through one-on-one interviews as well. Okay,
so it's quite a lengthy-ish process for you to, I guess, try to find the right fit.
Yeah, it is. We do screen quite a lot of graduates, I would say. And for each intake that we have, we only take about 10 grads. So we are quite selective in that way. But our assessment process, it's also, it's in a way, not just looking to assess those with an IT degree. That's why we try to keep it general in the way we assess the technical side of things.
So we hear a lot about future-proofing your career and the skills needed to do that. In your opinion, what are the skills students should be focusing on at university on top of what they're currently studying?
Yeah, so for me, especially since working with FDM, we're really about launching tech careers, no matter what background you come from. I do think technical skills are really essential, but these are things that are quite trainable, and you do learn a lot of this on the job. So more importantly, I think the skills that grads need to learn or pick up is things such as natural curiosity. So working in the IT space, there's lots of new things. So for example, cloud computing, as Carolyn mentioned, it's the next sort of big thing. There's a whole lot of different tech trends. So it's always important that, yeah, you're able to pick up these technologies. You're just eager to learn. So yeah, the eagerness to learn and natural curiosity is something that a lot of employers look for in a grad. Also on the soft skill side of things, just communication and interpersonal skills. So being able to understand the needs of different people, especially working in sort of the tech consulting space, and then teamwork as well. Working in tech, you're not, I guess common misconception is that you'll be working alone. You'll be working in your desk just coding. Some people have that misconception, but it's really working in teams, really working in different departments. So being able to, yeah, integrate well, build strong relationships is something that is highly regarded as well.
Perfect, that's great. So you mentioned earlier that when applying for grad roles, you don't have to have an IT background. But what about work experience? Can you still apply if I don't? Would I be able to apply without having any work experience for the grad role?
Yeah, first of all, if it's a graduate position, your recruiters and like employers understand that not everyone has had the industry experience. So you don't have to know it all coming into a graduate position. I also often hear from graduates, especially in the interviews, oh, I don't have experience, but things that you've picked up at university, those are really valuable experience. So for example, getting yourself involved in student societies or even yeah, attending events like this would demonstrate your experience or sort of that passion in the tech space, which a lot of us really look for. So yeah, you're still at university, so make the most out of it, get involved in student societies, gain volunteering experiences, internships. Yeah, these are all valuable experiences. But yeah, most companies at the end of the day will definitely equip you with the right industry aligned skills. So it's more about just that passion and drive. So even if it's not industry experience, every experience is valuable and for sure transferable as well to the role.
That sounds great. I'd imagine you go through a lot of CVs and cover letters. What are some examples of things to include? Some like the vital stuff that need to be included.
Yeah, so I do go through quite a lot of resumes and CVs on a daily. But first thing, which is quite obvious, and I did point this out earlier, is to make sure that you tailor your CV to the job description. So for example, if you're applying for a graduate software development role, make sure that you list down those programming languages that you're familiar with. So list down, say, Java or C++ or anything that you're familiar with, because that gets picked up by, let's say, AI or even recruiters as well. Also, use, I guess, on a not technical and not technical sense, I mean, include relevant interest. So for me, I really like looking at CVs wherein I get to talk to graduates around things outside of the technical sort of the technical expertise. So that just gives us talking points as well when doing your initial screening calls. And then also quality over quantity. I've seen resumes where it's like a 10-page, like an essay, and it's just quite hard for us to really go through that. So yeah, just quality over quantity at the end of the day, and make sure that your CV is really tailored to the role. Sometimes I also get cover letters wherein grads forget to change the company name, so make sure that you change that. And also just a small thing would be, yeah, just proofread your CVs and your resumes. Like you wouldn't want any typos to be there, because you're at the end of the day, your CV or your resume is the first impression that you give out to an employer. So it's really important that, yeah, you've got a good and a standout resume to begin with.
And how many?
Can I add?
Oh,
sorry, can I just add something as well, everyone? So just, I think it really shows as well, like if you spend the time and really read about the company that you're applying for and really read about their vision, right? What is this company? What are they trying to do? And really ask yourself, actually, why do you want to work for this company, right? And if you're able to kind of articulate that in your cover letter and say, this is why I want to join car sales, right? Because like I really buy into, like, I really want to be able to help people find the car that suits their needs, or whatever, right? Or help people have that, build the future vision of the car buying and selling experience, but really show that you have a genuine interest in that company and what they're trying to do. I think it will go a long way if you're able to say that and show to these recruiters and people like me that you've spent the time and you have that interest in the company, that we're not just another company that you're applying for and you just like replacing the company name in the cover letter and the resume. I think that'll go a really long way.
I was just going to follow up with that, saying with your CV and your cover letters, how many references is generally a good amount? Would that be 3 to 4 or Selena? Oh, have I dropped out?
Yeah, so generally, yeah, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, generally, I wouldn't really suggest to have your references included in your resume. That's something that we do ask once you are onboarded. If you do want, yeah, you feel free to. I feel like 2 reference would be good enough, because as a standard, we do ask for 2 references once you're onboarded. But even in your resume, yeah, I personally, I don't feel like it's essential to have your references included with the contacts as well.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. And has COVID?
Can I just add one thing there?
Please.
I was just going to add to that too. I think from the other view of like, client, like sort of potential candidates providing, their resume and selling them. So I think a lot of companies now also have, you find like on LinkedIn, being pretty big, and a lot of, recruiters are kind of looking into your LinkedIn profile. So I think on top of the resume, also like, make sure in your LinkedIn profile, like capture, key things that you've done. It may not have, companies and things like that, but, you can capture in there, some of the achievements you've done in uni, even like sort of social, sort of things outside in the communities that you've done as well. And I think that will kind of like, kind of expand a little bit of, your sort of that possibility of, getting reached out as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, we did run a session on LinkedIn for our students and how to, build your brand. So that's a great point there. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
So has, given the COVID pandemic, has that affected the number of graduate positions that have been available, or have they increased?
Yeah, so it's actually, it definitely increased, I would say. I feel like Australia is in a period of what they say is employment boom, especially in the tech space. So I'm hearing from my clients, there is definitely that demand for highly skilled workers, those core technical skills, especially since the last 2 years, it's quite hard for them to outsource tech talent. And so they really want to build sort of that talent here in Australia. And that's something that, I encourage, just even doing workshops, just encouraging having to look at, sort of upskilling yourself in tech, because there is that digital skills gap that Australia is facing. So it's actually quite different now to what it was 3 years ago. There's definitely that demand, especially in the IT space for graduates.
That's really good news. And what advice do you have on how to prepare for an interview? Go ahead, Joe.
I think you froze there for a second. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think my internet's unstable. Sorry, guys. Who's watching Netflix? But no. What advice do you have on how to prepare for interviews and assessment centers?
Yeah. I guess first and foremost, make sure that you know what type of interview you're going for. Some people assume that assessment centers are just a group interview or a case study, but obviously different companies would have different processes. So make sure you do understand what type of interviews you'll be having. And also don't be afraid to reach out to your recruiters and ask for advice or tips. They're definitely more than willing to give you some advice as to how you could ace your assessments. But in terms of general tips, do a mock interview with your friends or your family, and then ask for feedback. do your research about the company. That's number one. Have a look at, let's say, their values or initiatives, and be able to clearly articulate why you want to work for them, just beyond the scope of the role. So for example, at FDM, we do have different core values, and I really like it when graduates would talk about how they resonate well with those values, or even things such as, oh, I saw FDM has initiatives on empowering women in tech, and I'm someone who really values that as well. I feel like if you do your research beyond sort of the technical expertise, it does make you stand out. So that's one thing. Also be prepared to ask questions in your assessment. So as much as the recruiters or the employers would really want to get to know you, it's also your opportunity to get to know more about the company. So asking intelligent questions and being prepared to ask them as well would make you a standout.
Great. Nice points there. And
Sorry, can I just add one more thing? Just be open as well, guys. Like when you're interviewing, it's okay not to have all the skills required, but just show that, like, even if you don't have all the skills required, that you're really there and you're really open and willing to learn. I think that will go a really long way.
And I guess this last one, I'll ask you, Selena, but it's open to all the panelists. Do you recommend students getting a mentor, or do you have a mentoring type program within your company?
Yeah, definitely 100%. Definitely have a mentor. They will help you build connections, create those opportunities, and really identify areas for improvement. Like from experience, I do have a mentor, and that's where I found out that psychology wasn't really for me. I was more on sort of the HR and the recruitment side, and that led me to where I am today. So definitely having a mentor, I would highly recommend it. And even here at FDM, we do have some mentoring opportunities as well. So yeah, highly recommend having one.
Alan or Joe, is there a mentoring type program, or have you guys had a mentor in your career, or are you a mentor currently?
I'll go. I guess I'm both a mentor and I have someone mentoring me at Car Sales. So we do have a mentoring program, which is really great.
Lovely. That's good to know. And Carolyn?
Yeah, yes, same as Slalom as well. We have a few sort of, so we have like key mentoring program where we, would pair people up with each other, but then we also have, sort of specific ones to some of like our networks. So like, women in tech sort of network where we will sort of pair like, more junior, women engineers or women employees with senior team members. So yes.
That's really good to know. So it seems to be across the board that mentoring is a great service and something that definitely should be utilized, especially as a graduate. So that's great. Well, thank you, Selena, for that. We'll now move on to Joe. Joe, again, if I can start with just getting a brief background on your professional career, please.
Yeah. So hey, everyone. I've actually changed careers a bit. So I started way back when studying communications at University of New South Wales, and then I moved into graphic design. Actually, it's kind of my first job. But then I've kind of essentially the question that kept driving me is, why am I doing what I'm doing, and how do I know that I'm really helping people? So I moved from graphic design towards project management, and then found agile project management before moving into product management. And yeah, like it because the pattern that I continually saw is I would be building something with my team, but then people don't want it. So like customers, you'll hear this over and over again, right? You build something, you get all like excited, it goes to production, and then 1 to 2 months down the track, there's not that engagement that you expected. So that question kept driving me, and then I found product management. So I've been in product management for about 5 years now. And yeah, and really enjoying finding that balance. The thing that hopefully you've heard is that it's all about finding that balance between what you and your team of developers can build and what customers want, and what the business can make money out of, essentially. And when you find that alignment between those three, that's when you have that solution that is sustainable and scalable for the business. So I really enjoy that part of my job and working with everyone to make that happen.
So I recall car sales being one of the first kind of vehicle classifieds to move online. How do you continue to remain innovative?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things in terms of innovation, and one thing that I like, yeah, you guys as you start your careers to consider is it's always about helping customers, right? Like you're there to provide a service for someone, so you need to ask like, how are you helping customers, right? So like it's really important for companies to stay in touch with their customers. Customers are essentially there to do something. They have a task that they're trying to complete, and in reaching and in being able to complete that task, they always have something that is a pain point, something that's kind of blocking them or a risk for them to be able to reach their goal. And they also have the goals themselves, right? Like what's at the end of that task, right? Like why is it that they want to do that task? So the key to companies being able to innovate and stay ahead of the market is really understanding their customers and really understanding what are their pain and gain points and what can I offer in return for that? What is that area that I can focus the most of for my resources as a company that will give me the most return for that investment? And yeah, that's the key. The second key is really valuing tech processes and reducing tech debt. So I don't know if everyone's across the concept yet, but it's really key for companies to manage and maintain a low level of tech debt so that we can innovate really quickly and really get through your business as usual, BAU stuff really quickly as well. So it's those two things in tandem, like really understanding your customer and then really being able to have that environment where you can innovate and test quickly so that you can stay ahead of that.
Yeah, well, you kind of answered my second question, which was going to be with the digital marketplace forever changing, how do you stay in front of the pack?
Yeah, so I think actually I'll add to that as well, Kartik. So one thing that you guys will start to see hopefully is that the nature of our work isn't about completing projects. It's about experimentation and really learning and helping customers. So what that means is it's not enough for development teams to complete a task. You know, you really need to make sure that after you complete that task and it's in production, are customers appreciating what you did as you expected, right? Like before you build something, what was your expectation of how customers would be impacted by your product? Is that true once you release it? So agile is one thing, and it's good to have agile practices, but there's also that product-led development as a layer on top of it, where it's all about understanding your customer, continually learning and continually innovating.
Right. And what tech innovation excites you the most?
So my space right now is I'm in car sales, and really there's a couple of things that's most exciting in this area. With COVID and all, and the shortages and stock supplies for cars, there's really the notion of changing the way people buy cars. So like, what if you no longer had to look at a car before you bought it, right? Is essentially like the main challenge space, which is quite interesting. How do you reduce the risk for customers in that area? And the second thing is around electric vehicles. So everything around moving away from fossil fuel towards this new way in which, yeah, like we can make cars that are a bit more sustainable. So that's the kind of tech innovations in my area that's quite interesting.
And will what I'm studying at university help me in my career, or do you learn more from on-the-job training?
So I'd say it's a combination of both. For me, for me, ultimately, the point of university studying is to get your foot in the door, but the learning never stops, right? So like, I think it'll be quite hard, but I remember like when you get your foot in the door, then you realize, oh, actually, there's still so much that I don't know yet. So just be mindful of that you're there to learn. And there's one thing about the theory, like of what you're learning at university, but then there's the real life day-to-day practicalities once you start working in a company, because there's always commercial pressure, right? There's pressure to kind of, obviously, businesses need to sustain themselves. We all need to get a salary and get paid. So like, like there's that pressure, right? So like there's the day-to-day realities, and in which you'll continue to learn, and you'll be able to see how it is it that what you learn at university gets applied to in real life.
Have you have you managed graduates? And if so, what are some do's and don'ts for new graduates?
Yeah, so I have. I'm managing a couple right now, actually, who are in tech in rotations.
Nice.
I'd say the first thing is just be open to any advice. You're here to learn and understand from others, and don't be prescriptive to the way you think things should be done. You're right. Like you may come into this like with certain thinking, like, okay, this is agile, this is what it means, like these are the way things are developed, but in reality it needs to be adapted to where each businesses are at and the business model. So be open to that. And I'd say the second thing is be able to communicate to both tech and non-tech people. You'll quickly learn that your role as a developer, often you're working with people who really don't understand what it is that you're doing. Like they won't be able to read the code, which is fine, but you need to be able to articulate regardless, like what it is exactly that you did and why. And the third thing I'd say is really be curious, as I was saying, right? You're here to help customers and help the business. So be curious about why you're doing what you're doing, right? Like I as a product manager, really appreciate when my developers come to me like a month or 2 months after we release something and say, hey, Joe, how is that product performing, right? What are we learning from our customers? Like really show that curiosity. You're not here just to code and to deliver a feature. You're actually here to make an impact to people's lives and also make an impact to the company. So like, be really curious about that, because that will really guide you in your career and really making it will be really noticeable to people, because that's where the trend is changing from what I'm seeing. Obviously, we're moving from waterfall to agile, but now we're also adding another layer on top of it, which is all about, it's no longer enough just to deliver a feature or a task. You then have to make sure that it's actually bringing revenue to the company, but it's also helping people in their lives.
And a couple more questions, more on a personal scale. What's one question you would have asked earlier in your career?
Yeah, I looking back at it now, I wish I really asked myself, what is it that I enjoy doing? So like I got into graphic design and communications because I felt like that's what I should be doing. Like I felt like I should be like in a creative role, whatever, like designing things. But what is it that I actually enjoy doing? And I found that I enjoy communicating with people. I enjoy helping others find clarity in what they're doing. And that led me naturally to move away from design, more towards being the person who helps inform the designers and the developers in what they're doing and helping guide them along the way. So that led me towards project and product management eventually. But yeah, I'd say really be open yourself and really ask yourself that question, like, what is it that I enjoy doing? Yeah, just be really honest.
And would you kind of recommend having that conversation kind of as a student, or once you're got your foot in the door in a workplace?
I'd say just continually throughout your career, like always ask yourself that question,
Yeah.
because work is where you are at. Like, like it's not a depressing thing, like, but
Yeah.
you spend 40 hours or more a week at work. So just make sure it's something that you're really passionate about, that you care about.
Yeah.
And that is both in the role that you're doing, but also who you're working for, right? Like just ask yourself those questions.
Yeah, lovely. And just finally, what's one piece of advice you'd like to leave our students with here today?
I'd say similar to what Carolyn said before, just really explore all of the possibilities of all of the roles as much as you can. When I finished studying at uni, I knew probably like a tenth of the jobs that are available out there. Like it's amazing how big and how wide of a breadth there are of different roles. So I'd say as much as you can, talk to people in the industry, come to things like this, go to meetups, read. I think there's career guides out there. Just really see like all the different types of roles, understand what they are and be curious about it. If you're still at uni right now, I really recommend trying to intern while you're at uni. I think it's always great. Like that's something that I really wish I had when I finished uni was I wish I had in my resume some type of internship that I'd done. Enroll in those rotation programs. And lastly, as Carolyn said, go out and see the world if you can, right? Like do an exchange, live elsewhere and just experience all of that before you become an adult and like life stuff gets in the way. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend.
Well, that's the end of our questions. My questions, sorry. If any students had questions, please put them in the chat. It looks like there was one from Maddie. Did you find government job less stressful than the private sector? But I'm not sure who was that for Carolyn, I believe.
Yeah, I haven't worked in the government space. I have heard that it's not to say it's less stressful. I think the impression is that I think it's more that there's probably more process, more red tape. Obviously, the way I think just back to in terms of a lot of companies, when students come out into the industry, you'll find there's the commercial aspects, right? Like Joe said, revenue, how funding work and how we're, how can we operate with the funding we have. So like you'll find in government sectors, they work with what they have from from that perspective. And as a result, you'll find, things move a bit slower. So if you want to have a project, you want to deliver something, you have to go through all these due diligence to put together documentation, get approval and things like that. It might stretch up to 3 months, 6 months. Versus if you're at a startup where, huge investments, let's go trial things out, proof of concepts, and you just move quicker, right? So I wouldn't say less stressful, but I think because of the length of time it takes for things to happen, it may just seem a bit kind of not as fast paced as you'll find in other industries.
Yeah, I might add actually, because I have worked in the government. My first product role was actually in the government, working for the Department of Environment. And what's amazing is you'll like I work with databases that are like 20 to 25 years old, and it was really hard to get data out of it. Like I even worked with like literally paper documents, right, that somehow needed to be digitized. So like I wouldn't say it's less stressful, but it's stressful in a different kind of way, right? And like I think with government, it's a lot about getting funding approved upfront, which actually makes innovation quite hard in some ways. So where I was, essentially legislation need to pass the budget. And so a lot of the ideas were prescribed at the point of legislation approved. And why that's hard for you guys is it means that, okay, like say you start building this thing like 6 months down the line, and you're starting to learn from your customers, oh, customers don't want this, right? Or the data is showing otherwise. It's actually quite hard to then pivot because it's already been approved in the previous budget, right? So it has its own challenges. So yeah, I definitely agree with you, Carolyn. It's not necessarily less stressful. It's just it's a different kind of stress.
Yeah. It looks like another question's come in for you, Joe. So I was wondering, in terms of your experience of studying a degree in communication and working in graphic designs, these previous art-related aspects, how does that contribute to your career of being a project/product manager later?
Yeah, sure. So in product, it's really important to have a lot of empathy and understand how people go about doing their work. So I think how it's really helped me, and actually I've been curious enough to understand development as well. So I really understand the design and the development process, and it allows me to essentially help give my designers and developers the time and space they need to do their work properly. And I don't try to prescribe anything on them. So I think it's definitely been helpful for me, just in that way that I do wonder, like, had I not studied graphic design and communications, I think if I just still had the same level of empathy and willingness to understand how others do their work, it'll still be okay. But yeah, to answer, it has helped me.
Well, look, I think that was it for the questions, unless there's anything that comes through now. But I'd like to formally thank all our panelists today, Carolyn, Joe, and Selena. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us and giving us this kind of vital information. So we definitely thank you for taking the time out for us today. And Teresa, of course.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks all. Yeah, if you have any
Thank
other
you for having-
questions, just always feel free to reach out.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for having us.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Feel free to connect on LinkedIn as well if you have any questions, but thanks all.
Yeah, likewise.
Guys,
Thank you.
bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye, everyone.